US leader Donald Trump has imposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, sought to buy Greenland from Denmark, and tried to gain control of the Panama Canal. These critical moves have had a huge impact on the world agenda. President Trump issued 3 executive orders imposing new tariffs on imports from Mexico, Canada, and China. Each was originally scheduled to take effect on February 4, 2025. On February 3rd, President Trump agreed to suspend the tariffs on Mexico and Canada for 1 month, following discussions with his counterparts in both countries. However, the Chinese tariffs went into effect on February 4th. Trump's request to buy Greenland from Denmark was rejected. The Danish government and the EU wing warned Trump about this. Another target of the US leader was, as we mentioned, the Panama Canal.
It was given to Panama foolishly, but they violated the agreement, and we're going to take it back, or something very powerful is going to happen.
The Panama Canal is vital to our country.
The Panama Canal. The Panama Canal. The Panama Canal.
The Panama Canal.
Panama.
Trump wanted this canal in order to give the United States a class up in maritime trade. The Panama Canal is used to shorten the length and duration of ocean voyages between the North Atlantic countries and the North and South Pacific countries. On a voyage between San Francisco and New York, a 10-knot freighter can save 32 days by using the Panama Canal instead of going through the Strait of Magellan. A 16-knot passenger ferry can make the journey in 20 days less time by using the Panama Canal. The savings in time and distance would be greater for New Orleans than New York, because Gulf ports are closer to the canal than Atlantic ports. From New York to the major nitrate port of Iquique, 9 and 10-knot freighters save 23 to 21 days by using the Panama Canal instead of going through the Strait of Magellan. Even for Valparaiso, the main port for Chile's agricultural department, a 10-knot ferry from New York can save 15 days by using the Panama Canal. In general, using the canal saves 13,000 kilometers and 22 days. It is claimed that ships passing through this canal pay up to $400,000. It is said that 200 million tons of fresh water is used for the passage of a ship. This is among the factors that increase the cost of passage. For all these reasons, Donald Trump does not want US ships passing through the Panama Canal to bear these heavy costs. In a statement, the US State Department announced that the Central American country had agreed that it would no longer charge US government-owned ships to transit the canal. The move was expected to save Washington millions of dollars a year. However, the Panama Canal Authority, which is at the center of the diplomatic storm created by Trump's highly controversial stance, issued a statement to the contrary. The Panamanian presidency also confirmed this statement. President José Raúl Mulino denied that he had made an agreement that US ships could pass through the Panama Canal for free. This shocking move distracts the United States from its plan for control over the Panama Canal and frustrates Donald Trump's hopes for Panama. So what happens next? Will Donald Trump again push for freedom of transit through the Panama Canal? Can the Panamanian side cooperate with China to prevent Trump's request altogether? Does China have any influence over the Panama Canal? Could the US leader also retaliate against China to put more pressure on the canal? We will look at the answers to these critical questions in more detail. We will discover what the future state of the Panama Canal will be. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay up to date with our content. Let's get started. Following shocking statements by the President of Panama and the Canal Authority to Donald Trump, the focus has now shifted completely. Experts are now wondering what Trump will do next about the Panama Canal, because Donald Trump will probably not remain silent after this harsh reaction from the Panamanian government about the canal. The likelihood of Trump taking this stance was already evident from the leader's first days in power. As soon as he came to power, Trump imposed tariffs on several countries and made significant changes in the US domestic structure. So what could be Trump's next step in his plan to take over the Panama Canal? At a press conference, Trump was asked by a reporter whether the US could use military force to seize the canal. Mr. Trump refused to rule it out, saying that they need the canal for economic security. Mr. Trump accused Panama of allowing Chinese troops to control the vital shipping route linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and overcharging American ships. Mr. Trump also claimed that Panama was charging US ships exorbitant prices. Mr. President warned that the United States would demand a full, swift, and unquestioning handover of control of the canal. While it is unclear what prompted Mr. Trump's latest obsession with the Panama Canal, some Republicans have long objected to a decades-old agreement that ceded the shipping lane to Panamanian control. When Ronald Reagan ran for president, it was disputed that the people of the United States were the true owners of the canal. Donald Trump emphasizes that they bought the canal, built it themselves, and paid for it. Mr. Trump opposes the transfer of its revenues to China.
China's running the Panama Canal. That was not given to China, that was given to Panama foolishly.
By China. China.
He complains that Beijing uses the tolls as leverage against the United States. There has been no confirmation from Panama of Mr. Trump's allegations about Chinese authority over the canal. In fact, Panama seemed to have severely frozen its relations with China in recent days. Most recently, for example, Panama withdrew the Belt and Road Agreement with China after pressure from the United States. This has made it less likely that Panama wants a Chinese presence in the canal. So what is China's role in the Panama Canal? Panama claims that there are no Chinese troops in the canal, but CK Hutchison Holdings, a Hong Kong-based firm, manages 2 ports at the canal's entrances. Experts believe this raises competition and security concerns for the United States. Ryan Berg, director of the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a Washington think tank, said that CK Hutchison will likely have data on all ships coming through the Panama Canal. According to Ryan Berg, China uses its maritime operations to gather foreign intelligence and conduct espionage. Mr. Berg said that China is using or may exercise a certain element of control, even in the absence of some military confrontation. In response to these statements, the Chinese side has also commented on the issue in order to prevent it from turning into a controversy or a large-scale crisis. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said that China will respect Panama's sovereignty over the Panama Canal, as always. So can the United States regain control? This possibility seems very unlikely at the moment. Panama's president, José Raúl Mulino, has made it clear that the Panama Canal is not for sale. He also stressed that the treaties establish the canal's permanent neutrality and guarantee its open and safe operation for all nations. The Senate ratified the Panama Canal Treaties in 1978. Experts believe that the Neutrality Treaty even rules out the possibility that Panama could give special rates to the United States. But, as Mr. Trump has pointed out, there is a military option to obtain special rates for US ships in the canal. As president, Mr. Trump could order an invasion of Panama. According to the terms of its constitution, Panama has no army. This could make it easier for the US. But experts say Mr. Trump's offer of a military option is merely intimidation. What is the history of the Panama Canal, which has been the subject of fierce debate? The Panama Canal has always been closely linked to foreign powers. The idea of connecting the 2 great oceans with a man-made canal was first proposed in the 16th century by the Spanish explorer and conquistador Vasco Núñez de Balboa. However, it was only in the 1880s that the French began work on the project, following their success in building the Suez Canal in Egypt. The canal was eventually built by the United States between 1904 and 1914, after a failed attempt by the French to build one. The construction of the canal was a major undertaking. It cost the Americans about $375 million, the equivalent of about $13 billion or $10.5 billion in today's money, making it the most expensive construction project in US history at the time. The US also spent an absolutely vast amount of resources on the construction, maintenance, and successful operation of this major international waterway. Of the 40,000 workers who constructed the canal, more than 5,600 died from accidents and illnesses. The canal was completed during the US presidency of Theodore Roosevelt. From the start of the US project until 1979, the Panama Canal and its surroundings stretched 5 miles on each side. It remained a de facto US territory under the Panama Canal Zone Treaty, or the Bunau-Varilla Treaty, as it was officially known. and the US government administered the canal for several decades. The US and Panama would have joint control over the canal for the next 2 decades, until the US handed it over to Panama in 1999. The US control of the canal at the time created significant tensions with Panama. In 1964, anti-American riots broke out in the US-controlled canal zone. The riots led to a renegotiation of the Panama Canal Treaties. In 1977, US President Jimmy Carter and Panamanian leader Omar Efrain Torrijos signed the Torrijos-Carter Treaties. The treaties guaranteed the permanent neutrality of the Panama Canal. After a period of joint detention, the treaties called for the United States to relinquish control over the canal by 2000. Panama, as we mentioned, took full control in 1999 and has operated the canal ever since through the Panama Canal Authority. Mr. Carter, who died on December 29th, always saw treaties as signature achievements, and they featured prominently in his obituary. In a bizarre accident of timing, James Fallows, who was Mr. Carter's speechwriter at the time, and who accompanied the president on that 1978 trip to Panama, testified that they had a president who dreamed of taking back the canal at a time when the world now recognizes the canal transfer as an important part of a late president's legacy. Now Trump wants control of the Panama Canal back. Trump's supporters point out that the United States also helped to create Panama. In fact, this information is true. In addition to taking part in the construction of the canal, the US also played a role in the creation of the state of Panama. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Isthmus of Panama was part of Colombia. When Colombia rejected a proposed canal agreement, the US government encouraged a rebellion. The northern provinces of Colombia seceded, and the Republic of Panama was created. The United States Navy then prevented Colombian troops from crushing the rebellion. It's unclear whether Trump will be able to address this historical process and take back the Panama Canal, but the issue is likely to remain on the agenda for a long time to come. On the other hand, US leader Donald Trump's pressure to regain control of the Panama Canal could lead to other problems. Trump's request seems to have the potential to seriously drive a wedge between the United States and Panama. Panama and the United States have had a special relationship over the years. The United States recognized Panama as a state on November 6, 1903, after Panama declared its secession from Colombia. On November 13, 1903, diplomatic relations were established. In November 1903, just a few days after they declared their independence, the United States and Panama signed the Bunau-Varilla Treaty. Diplomatic relations between Panama and the United States were re-established on April 3, 1964, with the Moreno Bunker Joint Declaration. In October 1968, a group of soldiers overthrew President Arnulfo Arias Madrid and came to power, leading to changes in the country's foreign policy. Panama then assumed its role as an independent country and launched an aggressive and active diplomatic campaign before the main international organizations and forums. As a result of this diplomatic process, it was possible for the UN Security Council to meet for the first time outside its headquarters in New York and adopt a historic and comprehensive resolution in support of Panama's sovereignty claim against the United States. Then, in the face of complex negotiations, the Tack-Kissinger Agreement was signed on February 7, 1974. This agreement was the basis that would dictate the guidelines to be followed in the negotiations that became known as the Torrijos-Carter Treaties. In the relations that have continued to this day, the US side has become one of Panama's most important allies. Very important relations have developed between the two countries. The US regularly provided aid to Panama. US assistance to Panama was aimed at ensuring that Panama was a safe, prosperous and democratic country that continued to partner closely with the United States. The United States and Panama have long worked together to advance common interests, including improving citizen security and strengthening the rule of law. The United States and Panama have signed a bilateral investment agreement and a trade development agreement. The trade agreement significantly reduces or eliminates tariffs and other barriers to US exports. It also promoted economic growth, set high standards for the treatment of investments, provided a framework for resolving investment or trade disputes, and expanded trade between the two countries. US exports to Panama included oil, machinery, aircraft, agricultural products, and consumer goods, and accounted for 25% of all goods and services imported by Panama and 60% of all food imports. US imports from Panama included seafood, tropical fruits, sugarcane, coffee, and precious metals. In addition to bilateral trade, Panama facilitated trade as a transshipment hub for all Western Hemisphere economies, including the United States, creating an important service-based economy. The expansion of the Panama Canal in 2016, which allowed the passage of larger new Panamax vessels, brought significant benefits to Panama and many US East Coast ports. The US was the #1 user of the canal, with 72% of all transits going to or from US ports. In 2022, trade in goods between the US and Panama totaled $12.5 billion. The United States provided more foreign direct investment to Panama than any other country, with a total direct investment position of $3.8 billion in 2022. The energy and infrastructure, finance and insurance, and wholesale trade sectors led US direct investment in Panama, while the real estate and wholesale trade sectors led Panama's direct investment in the US. Now, with US leader Donald Trump's desire to take back the Panama Canal, all these important relationships and dynamics between the two countries could be damaged. Panama could lose a great deal of US support, and the US could be subjected to harsher warnings from Panama. But probably the biggest concern for Trump is Panama's growing rapprochement with China over the canal. In such a scenario, US efforts to rein China in may not be enough. As we mentioned at the beginning of the video, the US is using tariffs to block China in the global economy. Let's look at this leverage in more detail. Additional tariffs on imports from China have been set at 10% ad valorem. The new tariffs are in addition to other duties, fees, charges, deductions, and costs on covered imports. The additional tariffs appear to apply only to products classified as originating from the People's Republic of China. There is no indication in the executive order that the duties will apply to goods originating in Hong Kong or Macau. This, of course, did not sit well with China. Officials in Beijing have argued that US leader Donald Trump is not really targeting China, but the world economy. According to economists, Trump was trying to prevent China from becoming a growing superpower. China is spending resources to expand its influence in Latin America, especially its economic power. Russia is expanding its cultural footprint in different parts of the region, and Iran is tightening its grip as much as it can, officials and experts say. So it is not only China that poses a risk to the United States, but other countries that support the Beijing regime are also a major problem for Washington. Many believe that the US has neglected Latin America to some extent in recent years, and this is a reason for some to turn to China. This has also given Russia a sphere of power in Latin America. Experts argued that the US had lowered the bar too much, and that China only needed to do a little better to get in the door. We can see that the region is by no means homogeneous. In general, many countries in the region are struggling with fragile public institutions and the damage caused by organised crime. Some countries, such as Venezuela, are criticised by the US as undemocratic and embraced by Washington's rivals. Others, like Mexico and Chile, are labelled close allies by the US. Against such a complex backdrop, it is not surprising that US leader Donald Trump wants to reclaim the Panama Canal. At the very least, Trump wants to dominate the region's economy to prevent illicit activities and to counter the territorial ambitions of China and Russia. Time will tell how the future dynamics of the canal and the region will take shape. If the Panamanian government continues to pursue policies contrary to Trump's on the canal, the US administration may impose shocking tariffs on Panama. Panama may seek China's help in dealing with this problem. The Russian side may also support China in this regard. In short, there seems to be a complete chaos in the region. In other words, it is not yet completely clear what will happen. Thank you for watching.